Hello. Hi. My name is Brian Mariki. I am currently a business administration major at a private Lutheran university, which shall remain unnamed because I am still enrolled in that school. And this is a video about why I think higher education is broken. Now, I'm not saying that higher education doesn't work. I am saying it is currently broken. Right? But in order to talk about why I think it's broken, I have to give you some backstory, and I have to actually set it up so that you understand why I decided to go to college, what I'm actually getting out of it, and finally, what are my frustrations with it? Why do I think it's broken? Currently broken. So, to give you some backstory on why I decided to go to college, the reality is I didn't really decide that for myself. My grandfather was a teacher. My father was an economist / an ambassador. He was the ambassador from Tanzania to the United States of America. Fun fact, I know. So the decision for me to go to college was made probably before I was even born, because my family had people in it that really value education, and school had legitimately helped them out in getting a better life and getting better things. So I didn't really decide to go to college. I am not sitting here in my incredibly ghetto setup saying that college is a bad idea. I am sitting here saying that I think college, aka higher education, is pretty broken in the way that it works now. So what am I actually getting out of college, right? I can't say it's broken without giving you some context and giving you some more information as to what I'm getting out of it and what I'm not getting out of it. So what I'm getting out of it is that the most valuable thing in my entire experience of college and university has been the relationships and the friendships that I have formed at college, and that is a problem. If you had told me when I was 16, 17 that you are going to be getting into a significant amount of debt, but don't worry, you're going to make a lot of friends, and that's going to be valuable to you, I would have probably said thanks, but no thanks. Not because I'm antisocial, but because if I am going to be spending an extraordinarily high amount of money to gain access to very specific information, I would like to be able to use that information to make a better life for myself and for the people around me. And I am not getting that right now. And I have not been getting that for a while now. I'm not saying my classes have been useless, because that would be lying. But what I am saying is, if you asked me to tell you what I learned last year from a class, it would be a struggle on my part to try to remember what I actually learned. It's not that the information is useless or the class is useless. I just am not retaining that information because it is not really adding that much to my life and to my goals in life. And I'm a business major. People that are majoring in other fields might feel the exact opposite. However, based on the people that I've spoken to, and the conversations that I've had outside of class with classmates and people that are in the same situation as me, it is a pretty mutual feeling that school in its current form is not really giving people what they want. So what am I getting out of higher education? Friends and relationships that are valuable, but they are not the main reason why I want to be in college and in higher education. So what is broken about it? What are my frustrations with higher education? There are three main frustrations, and I don't have a script with me. I don't have a piece of paper where I've written everything down. These are honestly the frustrations that I've had throughout my years in college and just living life as a student in higher education. Frustration number one is that it costs too much money. It's that simple. It's an unsustainable model that is only being sustained because enough people are willing to sustain it. There will come a point in time where people are going to legitimately look at it and say, why are we paying so much money for this again? And one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to get considerably cheaper, or the schools are going to say, screw you, because the only way we can sustain it is to charge a very high amount of money, higher amount of money, and basically that's going to cut down the number of people that can go to school, and eventually going to school, going to higher education is going to be even more of a privilege for a pretty select number of people. Now I know what you're thinking, how is it a privilege if millions of people can go to it? Well, the world has over 6 billion people, and not 6 billion people can't go to higher education. They can't, they don't have access to it, they can't go to university, can't go to college. And I know what you're thinking, oh, a lot of it is kids. Well, it's not. What about the guys that are over the age of 18 that can't afford it? It's over 1 billion people, and therein lies the problem. Frustration number one, it costs too much money. Books cost too much money. Having to spend literally for some classes $190 to $250 for one book. It might not seem like a problem to you, but for a person that doesn't have a really high income, that is a significant problem. Housing, too much money to live here. And if you don't pay for on-campus housing, then you are basically paying for off-campus housing if you are from out of state, right? And balancing a job and going to school isn't as easy as some might think. Especially if you are the kind of person that would not like to spend your full check on just school and just school alone. So that's frustration number one. It costs too much money, and it is a very it's a very shared frustration. Frustration number two is that higher education is a one-size-fits-all approach, and the reality is we are not clones of each other. We are not twins of each other, and even twins don't really learn things in the same way. A one-size-fits-all approach is a very broken way of giving people knowledge and giving people opportunities that will help them for the rest of their life. Because the reality is, when everything is standardized and everything follows a very set format, creativity dies. It has no room to live, no room to breathe. Basically, school is doing a remarkable job of raising and cultivating very unremarkable people. That's just what I see. That is what a lot of other people see as well. If everybody has to follow some ridiculous APA format, some ridiculous deadline, some ridiculous book requirement, you gotta read through 7 books in order to do this one assignment, and you gotta write that one assignment in the exact same way, and the grading system is the exact same for everybody. Basically, everybody becomes boring. Their work becomes boring. If I was a teacher, which was, believe it or not, one of my considerations as a major, I wanted to be a teacher because I thought to myself, well, how can I actually fix it and actually make a change to this? Because I saw higher education being a problem from a pretty young age. Sorry, I'm going off topic here, but you need some context. Because I grew up reading a lot of books, but not textbooks, and I was always told that you have to be reading textbooks and not, Archie comics or Harry Potter books, and I was always against that, and I didn't believe that reading textbooks would make me smarter. I believe it would make me more knowledgeable, but not necessarily smarter. And so I was like, I can be a teacher and maybe try to correct this. But I said, you know what, if I want to make a huge change and a huge impact and actually change things on a global scale, teaching might not be it for the modern world. You might have to start a business and then sneak your way into change through that business. So back to the topic, which is frustration number 2, a one-size-fits-all approach. It's a terrible model because people don't learn things the same way. People are different. People have different obligations. People have different schedules. People wake up in different times. People travel to different places. So when you're telling somebody you gotta do this one thing or you gotta do these multiple things in this one set way, you're basically telling them become boring. Do something in a way that you don't want to do it in order to make my job as a teacher or as a person that grades the papers easier. There is no easy solution. There's just frustration because it's a battle of resources. It's about, well, how much time do we have? How many people do we have? How many students do we have? So there is no easy solution, but it's a frustration of mine and it's a problem, and it's one of the 3 main frustrations and 3 biggest problems of higher education, because I look at it and say to myself, if I were an employer, if I had my own business, the majority of people that are in school would not have a shot at getting a job in my company if I were an employer. Not because they're not qualified enough, it's because they all have the same qualifications. So moving on to frustration number 3, which is the last frustration I'm going to talk about. Frustration number 1 being it costs too much. Frustration number 2 being it's a one-size-fits-all approach. Frustration number 3 being higher education doesn't really prepare you for the real world. Now what do I mean by that? What is the real world? This isn't the Matrix, right? We're not here talking about Neo, you have to wake up, blah blah blah. The real world to me is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And I think higher education does a spectacularly poor job of preparing students for what you're going to be doing for the rest of their life. Now, how can I say that? I'm still in school, right? Here's the thing. It's a problem that far too many people that I know have encountered. It's a problem that far too many people talk about. It's a problem that basically manifests itself during the last few semesters of a student's years in school, because it is a slow realization that this thing that you learned 2 years ago has no actual direct impact on what you're going to be doing or what you hope to be doing for the rest of your life. It helps you in terms of being able to say, oh, I know what cognitive dissonance is, or oh, I understand this theory over here, I understand the Peter Principle. That's cool. But there are 25 or 35 or 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 other people that understand the same principle. So if you are someone that was hiring people for a high-level job, or hiring fresh talent from school for this one job, and the majority of people know the exact same thing, what is the differentiator? What is the thing that makes you go him or her and not him or not her? It's not what you learned in school. It is your personality most of the time. It's whether or not you are an a-hole or not, and whether or not you'd be a good fit for the company or not. And school does a really poor job of conveying that, because the way most schools make their money is by convincing people that you gotta spend a whole lot of money to gain access to knowledge, and it is that knowledge that will help you, make six figures or make millions of dollars. But the reality is that's not the case at all. It is the relationships that you form, the friends that you have, the people that you're able to sit down and talk to, that end up giving you the opportunities of having a better life, and the opportunities of doing things that you would have never expected or ever dreamed of doing. Like this video right now, it's a little past 12 a.m. Well, it's 12:30 a.m. and here I am in my kitchen shooting this video, because the person that got me to shoot the video is a person whom I highly respect and would probably kill for. Well, okay, if somebody approached Dr. Jones, yeah, I'd probably we'd use self-defense as an excuse. But yeah, I'd hope or hide the body. But yeah, see, it's these relationships and these friendships that end up giving you, the student, the opportunities to do things that could legitimately be things that you are doing for the rest of your life. And that's a huge frustration to me, that schools, higher education specifically, doesn't give you those opportunities. It just says, well, here's the knowledge, use it. Well, not everybody is self-motivated, and not everybody is a self-starter, and not everybody has the time, right? I'm not saying schools should babysit people. What I'm saying is, if you're going to be spending thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars, if you're going to be giving an institution that money, it is that institution's responsibility to ensure that you are getting your money's worth at the end of it all, right? I'm not saying a school should basically hold your hand throughout the entire process after school, or throughout the entire process during school, because that would be foolish of me to say so. What I am saying is, schools have to do a better job of providing opportunities and, providing a life for their students, right? I think that's the school's responsibility. It's also the student's responsibility, but it's a shared responsibility. 4 years or more of your life for one institution, I think the student deserves at least the opportunity to use what they learned in school in a setting And I think the school should work really hard to ensure that every single student is afforded the opportunity to do something with what they have learned in that school. Now, it's one thing for me to sit here and talk about all of the problems and my 3 frustrations. Frustration number 1 being it costs too much. Number 2, it's a one-size-fits-all approach. Number 3, higher education doesn't really prepare you for life. They don't really give you the opportunities, etc. It's one thing for me to sit here and talk about that, but it's another thing to actually act, to actually do things, to actually try to correct this mistake of modern higher education. Because the way I'm looking at it is our little brothers and our little sisters, they deserve a much better future than we do. They deserve a much better system of education, of higher education, than we currently have. And how do we actually act? How do we actually make that a possibility? How do we actually make that that piece of paper that we've written down all these ideas, how do we turn that into an actual thing that can help kids, right? And I'm gonna be honest, it's not easy, right? Because you have far too many people that go, no, the current system, it works, ignore it, it works. For them to actually look at it with a really critical eye and go, it works, but not for everybody, and that is a problem. And it's foolish to expect one system to work for everybody. However, it would be even more foolish to dismiss the complaints and the problems that a lot of people have with that one system, because those complaints are pretty valid. So maybe working for everybody is asking too much, but it should work for the majority of people out there, right? You shouldn't graduate school and struggle to make ends meet. I know more than 5 people, I could name more than 5 people right now that have graduated that have failed to use their degree for anything meaningful. And that is a problem. That is a pretty big problem. So how do we actually act, and how do we actually change it? Well, I think we have to really look at why it doesn't work, look at what most people are getting out of it, and figure out a way to take the best parts out of school, out of higher education, and marry them to what we actually want the future to look like. And that sounds pretty abstract and pretty vague, but I think the idea of spending 4 years or more of your life at this one place, or at this one system, in this one system, I think that is an idea, and that is a thing that needs to die. This video has been going on for far too long. However, I will write up and type up something that captures my thoughts a little bit better, because it is 12:30 a.m. and, you know, higher education sucks. It's not a secret. You ask students what's the best part of going to school, and most of them will start talking about their friends. So, I am Brian Mariki, and that is my video on why higher education sucks. I apologize for any crappy editing or any crappy animations or side movements, but my setup and recording setup is pretty ghetto, and so you gotta use what you have to make it work, right? Right. So, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed my video.